I think let's do a round of intros. I'll ask the panel to introduce themselves. I kind of really do like the breadth and the depth of experience that we have on stage today. Thanks, Justin, for setting me up. Been 12 years in the Netherlands. My Dutch, probably tell my Dutch accent. I'm pretty much native now. I won't do these interviews in Dutch. I see a lot of people sweating. Prior to setting up a consultancy, I ran media for Nike for 10 years across EMEA and globally for football. And a lot of these debates, still ring true in my mind. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting kind of stuck in. But should we just kind of go through, just allow you guys just to tell us kind of who you are, who you work for, maybe how many TV sets you've got at home.
Shall I start? All right. I'm Rik, and within KPN, I'm responsible for basically setting up the addressable TV department from scratch. KPN doesn't have inventory ourselves, so we need to collaborate, and we announced a collaboration with Talpa Network already. So that's pretty much what I'm doing.
Cool. Okay. Is that?
Can you hear me?
Yes. This one.
I'm Lisette Preston-Barnes, and I work for TiVo. I'm the Business Development Director for EMEA, and I'm spearheading the expansion of our advanced advertising and our TV analytics business across EMEA. And for those of you who don't know TiVo or aren't familiar with TiVo, TiVo is basically the expert in content discovery, in the content discovery business. We make it easy for consumers to find, watch, and enjoy great content. It's basically our mission to make sure that people find the content that they are looking for, and it's a seamless experience. Essentially, we curate personalized recommendations across multiple platforms, so live, TV, streaming, on demand, countless apps, and we deliver those personalized recommendations into one user experience.
Cool, thanks. Stéphane?
Hi, my name is Stéphane Printz. I work at FreeWheel, a Comcast company. We basically try to build an infrastructure for the TV of the future, or the new TV as we like to call it. So bridging, on the one side, transaction models, programmatic and direct, but on the other side, linear and digital. And and in my role, I'm responsible for Northern Europe, which is the American for Central, Eastern, and Scandinavia.
Hi everyone, I'm Jean-Paul Edwards from OMD. I'm sure you know OMD, one of the world's largest media agency networks. I'm Chief Product Development Officer for the region, and essentially a big part of my role is to develop the tools and services that enable us to understand the changing media landscape and make the optimal decisions on behalf of our clients all the way through the media process. So budget setting, channel levels, as well as our utilization of a lot of the new digital techniques and methodologies. And also to say, that's a very old photo of me, so I haven't aged terribly. So.
I'm hoping this one might work if I keep talking.
I think so,
yes,
yeah.
There we go. Hi, I'm Cadi Jones. I'm the Commercial Director for Europe, Middle East, Africa for a company called Beeswax. Beeswax provides programmatic infrastructure for people who can't or don't want to use out-of-the-box technology. So we allow a lot of customization.
Got it. Great. So let's kind of get stuck in. I think we talked a lot about capabilities throughout the session today. If I could kind of open it up, maybe with Lisette, what capabilities do we need from a Dutch perspective, from a Benelux perspective, across broadcasters, brands, and content providers? What capabilities are really going to be needed to take advantage of this next chapter of TV, which we are assuming is addressable? We are assuming maybe in the next 2 years. I don't know if that's probably not long enough, but we can debate that to the cows come home. But what capabilities do we really need?
Can you hear me? Hello? I'll use this. A couple of things. Well, obviously, if we're talking about addressability, the tech isn't easy. Keith explained a bit about what Cadent was doing, and it does involve a lot of tech players to get involved. TiVo was involved with the Virgin Media DLAR implementation because that footprint is primarily our middleware. So in order to make that AdSmart solution work, we had to collaborate with Virgin, Sky, Cadent, and ourselves. So it's not an easy process. It did take a lot of time. So it is about tech collaboration, I'd say. And the other thing that was mentioned here earlier, and I think it's been mentioned more than once, but I think there has to be some collaboration around one source for video measurement across platforms. So if we're going to continue to make progress in the area of transacting media and making it a simplified, easy way for marketers to place that type of advertising. Right now it's a bit complicated and not easy to measure even on a closed loop on the ROI aspect. So it's about tracking that cross-video impressions and then being able to attribute the results. So a lot of measurement, a lot of collaboration in terms of data has to happen as well. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, cool. Just on, Stéphane, maybe just pick up on the data part. Obviously, the work that you've been doing at kind of FreeWheel. Can you take us through some of the challenges that you've seen in this space to bring a more unified measurement system?
Yeah, so before that, I think there is one more thing that we need for the TV of the future to be successful, or as it was asked, to be loved by advertisers, and I believe it's simplicity. So while having that level of granularity and precision, that is also a requirement coming, like say, the TV has to be more digital. I believe we won't be successful if there is no simplicity at the end for the buyers to buy. And that implies that we all work together. So we have had that today as well, cooperation, collaborations. And yes, at the center of it is data. So I heard, or I saw the few presentations today. At the end of the day, to me, it kind of resonated that all of those moments, or contextual moments, for example, was the word that imprinted. But all of the others, it's all data points, yeah? Sorry for being a bit, maybe simple in my head. But I believe, yes, it's only data points that we need to have connected. And for that, it requires, yes, certainly some political wish to do so, because you have to realize that your enemy is not your enemy of the last 30 years, or competitors, let's say, but there are new ones, yeah? So it's all into first having the trust in a cooperation with your yesterday's closest competitor. Then in terms of technology, obviously it requires all players to play along. And for that, what we've seen on our site, so we've seen initiatives where broadcasters have gathered forces, defined standard segments for the buying side. We've seen operators sharing and ingesting their data into a broadcaster ecosystem. But what we also see, if you look at the bigger scale, is the need for trust. And trust is only when you share without sharing. So what I mean with that is looking at some systems appearing where it's federated systems, where everybody is ingesting the data, but where each one can use the data without it actually risking some data leakage. So we're talking about, for example, blockchain technology, as there are some initiatives in the US in that regard, across advertisers, telcos, broadcasters.
Yeah. Maybe, JP, do you want to kind of jump in on how are you talking to your clients about kind of preparing for addressable TV, and what are you kind of hearing back from brands?
So we have a very common question for us in many of the RFPs that we deal with, or many of the big kind of annual planning cycles, is how are you dealing with the huge decline in linear TV consumption? Now, on one part, that's the kind of there's the management of that perception. The fact is, it's not declining hugely; it's declining in places, and it's growing in others. My line here is that TV isn't dying, but it is getting older and needs to get wiser. It needs to understand its kind of key strengths and where it can play within this developing ecosystem. And another part of this is also that I may agree that addressability is not the future of TV, but it's definitely a strong part of a future story of success for TV. And for TV to grow and to be as healthy a medium as it can be, it needs to be able to accommodate and leverage all of these new capabilities. So addressability, in a sense, we don't talk about addressability as an isolated aspect. We talk about the utilisation of channels within a more data-rich environment, and that means lots of different things to lots of different advertisers. It can be how we maximise the reach for brands who are looking to, essentially their secret to growth is getting the 70, 80, 90% of an audience and reaching as many people as efficiently as possible. For other people, there are many other models of success. The digital world has built on these things hugely over the last sort of 10, 15 years. We see the 520 billion they're talking about. TV shouldn't be talking about the 200 billion. It should be talking about the opportunity with the 520 billion. So, echo all the previous points of simplicity. We need the global standards to make it as easy and understandable as possible. But very much that needs to be understood within the ways in which a brand can be distinctive and leverage its own unique strengths, its own unique attributes, its understanding of the audience to kind of give kind of more valued experiences to consumers.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see the difference as well, and I'm sure you must experience this as well in your day-to-day, but between the direct-to-consumer kind of digital-first brands who've grown up advertising on digital platforms and need help coming into more broadcast environments versus the traditional brands who need a lot more help going into the digital space. I think that's an interesting kind of parallel. You see a lot of digital-first, direct-to-consumer brands really embracing broadcast media because they know that it's the best environment to build their brand.
But they think about it in a very different way than traditional brands.
Exactly.
When we're thinking about, Rik, I want to come to your experience at KPN in a moment. I just want to explore this a bit more when we talk about complexity and adding more elements into kind of tech stack and make it feels that if you have addressable TV alongside regular TV, let's call it that, it's kind of eating its own breakfast. I don't know if that's a term we kind of use. TV is great at reaching big audiences, driving brands. So when you're talking about looking at smaller and smaller audiences, how do those things sit comfortably next to each other? How does that?
I mean, I think we've heard from a few people today, both SBS and Sky, sharing the number of new brands that addressability has enabled to come to TV, and I think that's an interesting place to start with that. This is addressability does make it possible for digital brands who still think about all media through the lens of addressability. Yeah. It enables them to start to activate in a different medium.
Yeah.
Yeah. So addressable essentially is just another tool. It's just another layer. It is bringing more dollars into our ecosystem for a number of reasons, and it was covered a couple of times today, both Jamie and SBS, Jerome. It's an incremental layer in terms of targeting light viewers, these upscale light viewers that don't watch a lot of TV, that you wouldn't normally catch with a broad-based campaign. It's also another opportunity to target viewers that perhaps haven't been exposed to your ad through a broad-based campaign, so you're then retargeting them through an addressable campaign to make sure they are exposed. So it's in the tactics of how you use addressable. It's not a replacement, it's an additive strategy for marketers to be able to make the most of their overall media plans.
Yeah. Because I think there's an interesting thing about how the money flows in this system as well. I think if you look back at the almost promise around programmatic display driving more revenue for publishers, that simply didn't materialise. I think I read a report over the weekend that was maybe kind of saying that 4% additional revenue for publishers, but actually addressable targeting, etc. That's brands are willing to pay 3-4 times what they would normally pay. So where is that money going? It's bleeding out of the system. Is that a kind of a problem that you're hearing, maybe JP, kind of hearing from your clients, where the money's going? Because surely, if this works to bring in more money into the TV ecosystem, that can be put into developing more programming, which is really kind of what it should be about.
It's what people. I'll try. I'll pass it back then. There's a bunch of different formulas at play all at the same time. So I think a really key point is over the last 15 years, we've seen a huge diversification in the types of advertisers that can access TV. Pre the millennium, you had to be a big national brand, maybe in some markets a big regional brand to even think about using TV. But with the rise of digital and the rise of these technologies, we saw earlier on that I think 75% of Facebook spends come from those smaller, long-tail advertisers. That's new money coming to the market. That's what's driven that $520 billion. And we have a number of clients who are relatively small spenders. We have multi-billion-dollar spenders, but we have those who are spending 5-10 million euros across a number of markets. But they are growing their businesses and they are looking at TV in a very serious way. But they can't think about 400 ratings. They're thinking about building it from the bottom up. So it's not that addressability replaces TV in this way. It's got an additive role, as you say, for reaching light and hard to reach niches and maybe getting yourself from 65 to 75 to 80% reach. But also it enables TV to be used by luxury brands who are only going to be targeting 1-2% of the population, and they can target them discreetly. It enables brands to say different things to different audiences. If an auto brand has a wide range of cars, is it cost effective to sell all those cars to all those people? We can now start to pick those things off a lot more precisely, or local brands, dealerships. So there's a huge wide range of advertisers that are investing heavily. We have the measurement technologies that's proving that these things work, and that's what's driven this huge growth in marketing investment over the last 10-15 years globally. And I think TV should be able to take a larger proportion of that if it thinks about things in a different way.
Rik, I really want to kind of come to you to talk about the experience you've had at KPN, and there's been a lot of talk today about collaboration and a lot of kind of positive thought, like we have to do this, time is running out, we've got to collaborate. But I think you probably you're the one native. Thanks, Justin, for saying I'm a native, but I think kind of Rik here is probably more suited to kind of like just talk to us about the experience at KPN. What have been the challenges so far, and when it comes to kind of process and those difficult conversations?
Yeah, so pretty much we started with writing down all the assumptions, right? And we step by step we tested those assumptions. For example, the technical part, which is pretty much done at the moment, so we're almost seamless, which is a very good thing. On the data side, you really need to collect data from throughout the company. It's a bit exaggerated, but that's basically the way the data is dispersed throughout the company. So you have to get it and put it into a single box. And that's also going quite good. And then I think a very important assumption here is the value, of course, right? And Harry mentioned it. Many other advertisers mentioned that the value of addressable TV is per view more than a GRP. But my internal stakeholders, they ask me all the time, is it really the case? And that's still something we need to prove. And in the meanwhile, we have to invest a whole lot of money into tech, right? Often the ad tech is quite you get these huge systems. Well, you only need parts, even more if you want to start small, because we're already investing a whole lot. So it's these kind of discussions you have internally. Next to the collaborations you have with the broadcasters. Yeah.
And what kind of timescale have you guys been working on in terms of from initial initiation to kind of where you are now and the future? Yeah,
so I started by myself 2 years ago, and then we grew the department basically. So we're now a bit more than a year building with a team on the technical part, and it's going quite fast. We were going actually quite fast, so that's exciting. And one thing I also want to mention, that also in this conference is about the ad tech, the advertisers, but what I often miss in the discussions are the consumers, right? Mm-hmm. So which incentives can we think of in order to make the proposition more interesting for consumers as well? Because, and it's different than in Belgium, because they basically converted the opt-outs into an opt-in. That's not going to happen in Holland. We need to generate the opt-ins per household. So how are we going to incentivize the consumers to give their consent and actually reach 80 or 100% of convergence? So that's also, I think, a challenge not only for KPN, for the whole ecosystem, I think.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of talk today, I think we mentioned creative wants, and I think it was the last panel. I just want to kind of dig into that a bit more, and I know it'd be kind of great if we did have representation from the creative community, I'll call it that, because I think one of the frightening things I think from being an ex-client, from maybe the kind of clients and the brands in the room are, here's another media opportunity. If the creative community, let's call them that, are not engaged, what do you run? What runs in that space? And then it becomes, when we're talking about customization, personalization, etc., does it fall flat? So, I don't know, maybe kind of open up without kind of pointing at anyone specifically about, from a, how do we better engage the creative communities to get the right kind of content? I'm talking about advertising content here. If the investment into programming has been much more than in the past. We've had, I say some of the Netflix figures, I think it was $1 billion for original content in Europe. I think 15 billion globally. A lot of that content will land in the Benelux market. That's only going to increase. I think if you looked, 20 years ago, there was a handful of top shows. Now there's, a couple of thousand almost. Quality of programming is going up. What's happening about the quality of advertising? Because there's a real worry there that if that doesn't keep up, is this going to create another kind of wasteland again? I'm not sure who wants to.
Yeah, I don't know if I try to have a go on this one. So I don't know. I mean, for me, advertising is all about the storytelling. It's all about creating emotions. And I think also that's a very big strength of TV as it is today. I mean, you can look at the KPIs, how engaged the audience is, how emotions are conveyed. I think that is a real strength of TV. And in using that, in combination with addressability, which is nothing else to me at least, but just to identify your audience in front, it allows you to, yes, of course, maybe save some money on building the branding story, but also it allows you to better articulate just your journey with the user. So in the digital, obviously, it's a little bit maybe faster, a little bit easier, and there's already endeavors to have creative just put in front of the right audience because they can modulate as well the creative just to fit in. We've seen that in the retargeting part. But that's also a story for broadcasters, definitely. And but that will come, I would hope, automatically once there is that knowledge shared equally about the users. So then you can, it's also in the interest of user experience, yeah? And you have also some business models that maybe support that. That's maybe at the junction between the AVOD and the SVOD. So actually you have the choice, yeah? You can just go without advertising. But you can see also now the models kind of articulating each other, which gives an opportunity for each of us to improve the AVOD so that the user experience is not bad and people stay with you, or you just push them to the SVOD if your advertising is not good enough. So I think that there is a thin border between user experience and ad load, and there is also the border on the SVOD that you won't have enough subscribers at one point. So somewhere there, and that is requiring creativity to be good enough. There is, I guess, the sweet spot.
So JP, with conversations with clients about taking full advantage of new media opportunities, to put it that, we talked previously about let's focus on the opportunities. What are the conversations you're having with the creators of, let's call it advertising, to match those environments, the addressable kind of future? How are those going?
There's a number of conversations going on with our agency, creative agency partners within Omnicom and also those that work on our client's business. They're a lot more expert in terms of the minutiae of the challenge there. Essentially, it's the old more for less, where you could get away with just a single big budget TV ad that for some reason always need to be shot in South Africa for the lights, which I never understood. But,
and the wine.
It's how, saying that there are these different contexts out there. There has been these kind of two different universes in a sense. So you had the digital kind of bottom-up world and creating stuff for 500 quid or something versus the huge TV budget. Now we are thinking about it's very much on that shoot. there's 3 or 4 stories we're generating. There may be 10 or 12 cuts of the ad. Definitely what's happening now is, there's the 30-second spot, but actually is there the 3 or 4 minute brand film alongside that, plus a dozen or so 3-second spots, some of which are edits of the spots, some of which are shots on their own. I think our role there is to illustrate the optimal investment levels and guide our clients in terms of, because it's a very hard decision to make. Actually how many creatives you should be making. So we built some tools that start to say, how many executions you should be doing, what portion of those things should be on broadcast channels, which ones should be on more addressable channels, guidance within the communication strategy. So sometimes actually, multiple messages can get lost. And actually you need that single message that is repeated quite a few times, low involvement processing kind of way, and that's the most effective route. Other times it needs to be very relevant, take some kind of contextual cue, and be very tailored towards someone's part in the consumer journey.
Yeah, and Cadi, from Beeswax point of view, what kind of learnings have you had from, I don't know, the display space that could be relevant for addressable TV?
In the last year or so, there's been a huge amount of innovation in OTT. And so companies like Spirable or Keymantics in France, using AI to build real-time video creative for their customers and tailor that. They're not ready for prime time, but there's a huge amount of innovation coming into that space, and I think it's not in the distant future that will be available for.
Those experiments are going on in the kind of the YouTube world, and lots of little 6-second spots and
But even outside of the walled garden as well, it's.
The point at which you can create a really great TV ad with an AI. I think our cousins at PhD, Cannes a couple of years ago said, when will AI win a Cannes line? I don't think quite yet, but maybe one day.
Yeah, great. With let's come back to kind of walled gardens, because I think that's something that's come up a couple of times. And is there a danger that this, the way that we're even talking about approaching addressable TV, creates another walled garden? That's some trigger words for a lot of, I don't know, at least for a couple of brands in the room. Do you want to talk to us a bit about how we kind of overcome that? Maybe Lisette? What's that? Yeah.
Sure. So I think in order for addressable to work, the various sources of data need to collaborate. And I'm not just speaking on a linear sense. There's also the advent and the proliferation now of connected TVs. And ACR data is going to become more and more important, especially for the marketer who's going to be looking to plan their media and make sure that their branding message is resonating at the right time during that funnel, where obviously you're building at the top, but at some point there is going to be some connection with where the consumer makes a decision to buy a product. And marketers are going to need all sources of data collaborated in one source to be able to come up with the marketing plans that they need that are balanced between the activation and the branding. Because I think that's the biggest conundrum right now, is that marketers have actually put too much emphasis in activation and in that last click for the results. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if we don't look to have those walled gardens come down and provide more data to the advertisers, to the marketers, they can't make better marketing decisions and use those platforms to market their message. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough world, isn't it? I mean having the data is your kind of competitive advantage, I guess. If we talk about a walled garden, kind of throw this in for, I'm not sure how we're doing for time, probably got one more, and then what if Facebook decides seriously about to get into TV? What happens? Because we talked about these giants, I don't know, I mean, I take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, saying that a huge increase in digital. These figures are like 60% of that is search. It's kind of, is it eating from a different pie? But we talked a bit, I don't know, a while ago, probably a few years ago, with like Facebook, we're going to start potentially buying rights. There was some discussion there, even a kind of trial. That doesn't feel like that's going to go away. This question about, right, we've got to do something, broadcasters in the room, we've got to move on. Otherwise, inaction, and someone's going to fill that space. So what would happen if Facebook came along to go into TV seriously? Who wants to? I was talking to JP. He's probably talked to that before.
I'll chip in. I suppose I think Facebook understand that they are not a TV brand, and they're not going to win in TV the way that traditional TV brands are successful. They understand their strengths. They're strong with data. They've got a big global audience, and they are playing around with a bunch of different kind of formats. So they're very serious about video, as far as I can tell, and are investing, in a relatively conservative way in that space. But I think they understand where they have dominance is with the 75%, those smaller advertisers. So I think they'll be building a bottom-up solution for people to target niche brands and leverage and tiny niche audiences. And I don't think they'll be playing so much in the big global ABC One 16, 34-year-old space.
Yeah, so.
I think the thing to look at though is that playing around piece. That lean startup mentality comes naturally to them. They have speed and agility and the ability to test things, read the data and see what is working. And so I don't think it would be to your point, it wouldn't be a top-down strategic decision. It would be, this is what the data tells us. And I think that's something that we can all learn from, that need for speed. Inaction is the worst possible thing. Trying and learning from what you're testing is a very solid approach.
Yeah. So I think we're going for a half past kind of finish, is that right? Okay, so I just want to kind of wrap up now with maybe let's take one or two of your top 2 game changers for addressable TV. Can we start with Rik? Sorry.
Well, I don't know if it's a game changer, but already what we're seeing abroad is that some broadcasters or operators aggregating inventory. So I think that's a very interesting opportunity also for the Netherlands. And also what I mentioned about the consumer. So we need to think how to make it more relevant, perhaps less ads a minute per hour, for example, different kind of business models. But we definitely should take a look at it.
So aggregation of addressable inventory across platforms. Finecast are doing a really good job of that now, and they're launching globally. I think that's really important, as you said, Rik. And then I think essentially the standardized measurement for video has to be, that's going to require quite a bit of collaboration, even with ad agencies. And the decision has to be, what's the metric? Are we buying audiences? Are we buying outcomes? How are we going to judge addressable as effective? And then what is the closed loop? And where is the data to make sure that that's a standard measure across all video platforms?
Yeah, so for me, it's sharing is caring. So it's looking at really leveraging all of the possible assets, starting at the advertiser side to the user data. So federating on that, and the second one would be make it simple. With everybody protected, because if we don't do that, then it will just not work. And maybe I add a third one, is not reducing addressability to activation, because you can also do a lot for brand building, I believe, if used properly.
Yeah.
All of the above, so I'll try and add something new to that. I'll say zero-party data models, so consumers bring their data to the mix and being an active participant. This is far more a long-term thing. There's a few little experiments going on around the world with blockchains and these kind of things. But yeah, consumers being an active and willing and informed participant in the process.
And how, in your opinion?
And how? Essentially, ultimately, the consumer's data being in a blockchain, and that it's the federated environments, and essentially the broadcaster being given permission to be able to query that situation, and then the real-time decisioning. So,
but why, as a consumer, would I do that?
Because you'll be making money out of it, getting free content, and yeah.
I think I kind of agree with everyone, but just to say, again, to build further, taking that audiences piece one step further, I think the digital-first brands care about reaching their audiences, whether they're reaching that audience in their living room, on their mobile, or on the web. And I think the more we can focus on connecting brands to the audiences that matter to them, the more we win.
Yeah. Cool, great. I think we're at past. I'm trying to keep. I'd like to just. I don't think anyone else is going to do it, so I'll do it. Thank you very much to the MediaTel team. Very much to Justin for bringing this event to Amsterdam. I'd like to thank my panel as well. So quick panel. So I hand over to Justin for a last.